Our home is in the border ranges of southern Queensland, and anything with feathers is usually welcome to a free feed. The regent bowerbird has learnt it is small enough to get into the cage, which is there to protect the food from the satin bowerbirds. Junior regent bird has no trouble chasing the larger satin bowerbird. The stormbird is always welcome, especially if it means rain. The Lewin honeyeaters have to wait their turn. The striped honeyeater only ever comes in for a drink. The sulphur-crested cockatoo likes a drink and will eat all the food you care to give it, and even taps on the back door to ask for more. The eastern spinebill is a regular visitor whenever the kunzea or the grevillea fire sprite is in flower. The spotted dove is an introduced species, and I've only ever seen one in our yard. Our resident possum sometimes found his box a bit hot in the middle of summer, and he would go and curl up in the middle of a big old staghorn. This whiptail or pretty-faced wallaby turned up now and again during the drought. The top-knot pigeon sometimes pays a visit when the native figs are ripe. The white-headed pigeon is an infrequent visitor and turns up for a few days about twice a year. The red-browed finches have only recently found our yard and the seed during the 2019 drought. These fig trees were planted about 20 years ago, as well as a host plant for the Richmond birdwing butterfly. 2019 is the first time I've actually seen a female on the plant. About 1 kilometre from home, in the Border Ranges National Park of New South Wales, is Logan's Gully. Some of the field gnats may remember visiting there some years back. The big cedar tree that I estimate was fallen in the 1950s is still there. But in November 2019, the gully is completely dry, except for the small rock hole that I keep topping up with water for whatever wildlife may be around. Having creatures come to this little water hole makes bird watching and photography somewhat easier. Sometimes while bird watching you do see other wildlife. This goanna enjoyed a drink, a scratch and then a 5-minute swim. And sometimes you only have a phone camera to capture the image. And I often wonder, will this old crayfish survive the drought? I was interested to see what would come into the waterhole at night, so I set up a Scout Guard camera. At one stage there were 4 paddy melons there together, and the only other thing of interest was a scarpet snake. Now and again we are lucky enough to spot a koala. This poor bloke has an eye problem. I suppose it's lucky it's only in one eye, but it seems to be a common problem with koalas today. These top-knot pigeons were very skittish, and if they saw you there, they were gone for the rest of the day. Lots of bees also gather at this water, but it can be a dangerous place with the drongo around. Even this drongo with one eye seemed to eat well. The bees also have to watch out for what I think are young water dragons. This is a different type of native bee. They came from just over the hill in Christmas Creek, so they are probably around here as well. They close their hive up on a cold night. The Lewin honeyeater will also take a bee if the opportunity presents itself. Sometimes you can be lucky. I was busy videoing a spectacled monarch when a white-cheeked honeyeater flew into the scene and then flew off, never to be seen again. In all the hours I spent at the waterhole, the crested shrike-tit only came in for one very short visit. Last but not least is the log runner. They always made life difficult by waiting until just about dark before they came in. Early one morning this dingo came in. It seemed very unafraid, stood about 15 metres away and eyed me off, and I think it was calling for its mates to come in for a feed. I got out of there fairly quick. I don't go back there now unless I'm carrying a big waddy. If the hooded parrot is on your bucket list, the place to go is Pine Creek in the Northern Territory. And early in the morning, look for the dripping tap in the little park opposite the service station. After leaving Pine Creek, we spotted this busted or plain turkey. It looks to have a bit of a health problem. If you would like to see big crocodiles close up, take the cruise that leaves from Timber Creek and travel 30 k's down the Victoria River. You don't even have to leave the Timber Creek caravan park to have lots to see. A few days later, I was on an early morning birdwatching tour on Lake Argyll. Our main quarry was the yellow chat. One of our favourite destinations is Kununurra. Here there is always something to see on the lakes, in the parks, or out on the farms. The white-quilled rock pigeons like this rocky country in the national park right next to town. There always seems to be something happening out on the farms. This helicopter is endeavouring to chase black cockatoos off a crop. It must be expensive. We went past there 3 times, and every time the helicopter was up doing its job. After a while, it was back to their mountain refuge for a spell. Wyndham Caravan Park is the place to be if you want to see Gouldian finches. You can join other keen bird photographers in the little creek at the back of the park. And of course, if you have finches, you have raptors. Sang's Garden, about 20 k's out of Wyndham, is where I was lucky enough to spot the grey falcon. Not far from Wyndham is Marloo Billabong and Parry Creek Farm. These sea eagles have attacked a magpie goose and have it on the ground. The goose is a bit heavy for this eagle and it is having trouble taking flight. The crows and kites don't seem to appreciate the eagle's presence, and this time the magpie goose is fortunate and escapes. The brolgers don't pay much attention and just keep doing their thing. Until I reached Parry Creek Farm, my search for the Pictorella manakins had been unsuccessful, but here I came across a flock of about 1,000, mixed in with star finches, blood finches, masked finches and a few zebs. We had never seen the flower of the baobab tree before. They only flower in the wet season and we usually travel in the dry, but for some reason this year at Parry Creek Farm there was some in flower in June. Our next destination will be Broome, with a few things in between. Our first excitement was when the local grazier started to burn right next to the free caravan park where there was quite a few of us camped. Our next destination was Lake Ellendale, which sometimes has a lot of water in it and supports a large population of cormorants and other water birds. It was here that I also saw the golden-backed variety of the black-chinned honeyeater. And at a random stop between Lake Ellendale and Broome, we saw the varied lorikeet. "238 kilometres east of Broome is the Big Baobab free camping area. And about 1 kilometre from here is a stock watering trough that always seems to have some birds around morning and afternoon. A good place to view the mangrove birds in bloom is at Streeter's Jetty. Wait till the tide is out a bit and go to the right along the back of the buildings and find where the fresh water from the air conditioner plants comes out. At low tide, don't forget to look for the colourful crabs that live around the end of the jetty. Then take a drive out to Roebuck Bay near the bird observatory. Here the birds usually rest on the beach, but on a real high tide they are forced onto the little rocky outcrops just out from shore. And of course there's always an osprey keeping an eye on things. Our neighbour in Broome was Tom, and his hobby was native bees, and he was good enough to open a hive and let me have a look inside.
So what breed are these?
Ostroplebia essentoni.
There's the queen, and notice how different the brood is to the spiral brood of our southeast Queensland native bee, Trigonia carbonaria. The next leg of our journey is from Broome to Tozer's Bush Camp near Bremer Bay. 4 hours south of Broome is 80 Mile Beach. It was here we watched people catching threadfin salmon, but our interest was more in the shells. You had to be out early after the high tide. These dirt desert peas are at Indy Station. You'll notice they have a red centre instead of the normal black centre. Sometimes they have white flowers there. I thought I had pulled well off the road to give these oversized loads plenty of room. I didn't expect another road train to try and pass in between us.
Well, I wasn't quite expecting that.
We seemed to strike it just right for the wildflowers around Canna and Coal Seam National Park. At Canna, this was my first and only sighting ever of a wild malleefowl. On the road south near Eneabba, we spotted what I think are these Barnaby's black cockatoos. The gardens at the Stirling Ranges retreat were very productive, and I at last spotted the regent parrot and the purple-crowned lorikeets. The elegant parrot was a bonus. About 2 hours' drive from the Stirling Ranges is Tozer's Bush Camp. This is 700 acres of regrowth bush with walking tracks and vehicle access. Here I was lucky enough to spot the purple-gaped honeyeater, a bit of a rarity. I would recommend the guided bus tour around Tozer's property, particularly for anyone who wants to see the different colour variations of the Queen of Sheba orchid. On one of our trips to Bremer Bay, we came across an injured tiger snake being devoured by another tiger snake and dragged off into the bush. Notice there are 2 tails. Upon leaving Tozer's, it was head east for Queensland and home, with one 5-day delay for mechanical repairs, and then a few days at Bowra near Cunnamulla. Wet or dry, for some reason, Bowra always seems to deliver. Now, just before we end, here's a little test. Who can see the owl at night jar? Where was our favourite destination? It had to be the Kimberleys. Where else could you buy tough, tasteless, fatty meat and iffy seafood?